Hello, and welcome to Archive Dive. I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Each month, we dip into files on historic events, people, and places in Superior and Douglas County with local historians. Today, we'll learn about a Superior journalist's voyage of discovery and take a closer look at his form of transportation. In 1891, Ned Dwight, a journalist with the Superior Leader and later with the Superior Call, decided to launch an in-depth report on whaleback ships. To do so, Dwight took a job on one and sailed across the ocean, sending back letters to newspapers around the country as he went. We'll learn about the young reporter and the history behind the whaleback ships. Hint, the last whaleback ship can be found in Superior. Helping us dive into the story today is local historian Teddy Meronek. Hi, Teddy.
Hi, Maria.
Thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm glad to be back.
So tell me a little bit about why you decided to take a deep dive into Ned Dwight.
Well, it wasn't really my decision. I just happened to get involved with a research question at the Superior Public Library, and they asked for some help because they were looking for, someone was looking for who Dwight's Point, and I don't know if people know where Dwight's Point is, but it's next to Clough Island out in the Billings Park area. Mm-hmm. And they didn't know exactly who it was named after. So, you know, the question was, somebody needs to find this. Can you help?
And they said, Teddy, would you help?
Well, no, I worked with another retired librarian who's much better than I am at this stuff. But it was really a mystery because there was nothing really anywhere that said, this is the date that we named it Dwight's Point.
Oh.
And there was one reference, I think it was online on, maybe it was the St. Louis River Alliance or some website like that that said Dwight's Point was named after a local newspaper man.
Oh, and that's all you had to go
That
by?
was it. That was it. Well, that turned out to be wrong. It was actually named after a New York businessman who also had interests in North Dakota. I think he farmed out there too, but he had money. And he was here in the 1890s. And if you had money and you came to Superior in 1890, you could buy yourself some property.
And have it named after you.
Right. And I was very disappointed when I found that out because by that time I had learned a lot about the other Dwight.
Ned Dwight.
Edward Huntington Dwight. And I kind of fell in love with him. And I just thought, well, it's a darn shame that it's not named after Ned instead of this other guy. Because the man it's named after, or the family it's named after, they didn't spend any time in Superior. Oh. You know, it's like a lot of things in Superior that are named after people who really never set foot here, such as Tower Avenue. Charlemagne Tower never came to Superior. So I was thinking, well, could we change it and we can name it after Ned? But I don't think that's possible. No. But he was such an interesting character, and he had a very short life.
And yet you fell in love with him.
I did.
What was it about him?
Someone said about him, I think they wrote in the newspaper that he was a bohemian. He loved to travel. He was a good writer, and he was sort of like the life of every party.
Okay.
And he had actually been born out in Massachusetts. His father was an Episcopal priest. His grandfather had been president of Yale College. At the time it was Yale College, now Yale University. His mother died when he was about 5 years old. And his parents had been friends of Emily Dickinson, the poet.
Really?
Yes. So he traveled in, certain circles. And he had an older sister, and she was about 5 years older than he was. And, two young kids when their mother died. And I don't know, that might have had an effect on Dwight. He was well educated, and, considering his status. And I think his father wanted him to go to divinity school, and he started that, but it just didn't work out for Ned. He was not that suited to that life.
To being a preacher?
Right.
Okay.
He was also an artist, and he had traveled to Europe. He had gone to Munich, and he studied art there for several years.
Oh, wow.
And then he came back to the United States, and he sort of started meandering his way around. He didn't go back to Massachusetts. He came to the Midwest.
And ended up in Superior?
He ended up in Superior via, he had spent some time in Iowa where he had an art school. Oh. And then time in Illinois. And then he ended up at the Milwaukee Journal.
Okay.
Somebody who was an artist, but whose talents also were in writing.
Mm-hmm.
So he got hired by them.
To write or to do
To report, yes, to report,
okay.
yeah. And he started his own newspaper. Was it in Sheboygan? And I think it was then taken over by the Milwaukee Journal.
Okay.
But then he made his way north, and he ended up in Superior, Wisconsin in late 1890.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately got a job with the Superior leader as an editor.
Oh,
so,
not even a writer anymore.
I know.
He's an editor
I
now.
think he must have had some talent, obvious talent that people saw. And then before you know it, he's elected first vice president of the local press club.
Oh, wonderful.
Became a great friend of David Barry, the photographer.
Oh, the famous photographer.
Famous photographer.
Who had
yeah.
Superior roots, yes.
Yes. So, and so he came here in the late 1890s, and that was the same time when Captain McDougall started building a whaleback that would later be known as the Wetmore. And it
Was that the first whaleback?
No.
Okay.
There had been a couple built in Duluth. I don't know how many were built in Duluth. And then McDougall could not get the property in Duluth that he needed for his shipyard. So he came over to Superior.
Okay.
Which was endlessly frustrating, I'm sure, to Duluth.
That they lost Alexander McDougall and his shipyard.
And so he came over here and started building them. And this one was named after Charles W. Wetmore, who was secretary of McDougall's business, the American Steel Barge Company. And I think McDougall's business really took off was when he got Eastern money involved in the business, like John Rockefeller.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Was invested in the
Not only
shipyards.
in that, but Rockefeller had interests on the Iron Range too, in the mines.
Oh, wow.
You know, that was the beginning of the big iron ore era of Minnesota. And so they could use the whalebacks to ship iron ore too. So yeah, they went hand in hand. Yeah.
So the Wetmore was under construction.
Yep.
As
in December, I think he announced in December of 1890 that he was building this boat.
Okay.
And then Ned was working on the paper, and in June, they launched the ship in May. They launched the Wetmore. It was finished, and they launched it in May. And in June, it was ready to go. And so the excuse Ned gave, this is why he went on the Wetmore. He wrote an article that said he had inadvertently misspelled the name of a very prominent person in Superior, and he left town because this guy was looking for him.
Was that the truth?
You never know with Ned. That's the thing. You never know if it's true or not. But they also had the local newspaper people had a baseball team. So the last game he played before he left, the teams were the cops, which was obviously the police department, and then the newspaper men, and their team was called the Pencil Throwers.
What position did Ned play?
I don't know.
But he was on the team.
He was on the team, yes, and that happened just before he left, and so they left Superior. I think it was June. Was it June 10th? Something like that.
Okay.
And so they were going from Superior, Wisconsin, to Liverpool, England.
Across the ocean.
Across the ocean.
Okay, now if you've seen a whaleback ship, they're very flat on the bottom.
Right. And
Is that safe on the ocean?
well, apparently it was.
Okay.
But I had never thought. I've never heard about this until I met Dwight. Ned Dwight, I had never heard of a whaleback going across the ocean.
Right.
It just seems impossible to me. But they did. They crossed Lake Superior. They went to the Sioux, but the Wetmore was too big to go through the Sioux locks.
So how did they get it? Did they get it out there?
They ran the rapids on the St. Lawrence River.
So Ned, who's not a sailor, is on this
Right.
whaleback
Yes.
running the rapids.
Yeah. They left Superior loaded with wheat.
Okay.
About 70,000 tons, I think. And that helps the whalebacks. I learned a lot about whalebacks on this voyage with Ned, the balance and everything. And so they got there, they got to the locks, and of course they can't go through those, so they have to go down the river. But they unloaded the wheat there.
Oh.
And so they ran the rapids without cargo. And I read different stories, and one of them said that Captain McDougall was at the helm.
Ooh.
But then I read other stories that they've got experienced sailors who had, done this rapids thing before, and they were actually taking the Wetmore, into the river. So I'm kind of going with that story rather than Captain McDougall. And they also said when they got to England and they opened the hatch for the storage, that you could still see McDougall's footprints in the wheat. Oh, because they did that because they said it was such a smooth ride.
Oh,
yeah. But I just don't know if Captain McDougall was doing that kind of stuff. I don't know.
And he wasn't with the ship as it went to England, was he?
No. He got off. He in fact went out to Washington, where he was going to open another shipyard, another whaleback shipyard. But no, they got out into the ocean. It took them, how many days was it? About 10, 12 days. To cross from the East Coast to Liverpool. So they get over there and there are people lined up because this is such an odd boat. It looks so different from anything else anyone's ever seen. And they took it up the Mersey River to Liverpool and they parked it there and they gave tours.
Really? And
they charged 1 shilling for everybody who went on, and all the profits went to a local orphanage. And I think they made something like 113 pounds or 115, but that is equal now. I looked it up. That nowadays that would be about $25,000, which went to the orphanage. So, they stayed there, and then they were getting ready to come back across the ocean, and the captain died.
Oh, no.
Yes.
So they got stranded over there with a ship with no captain.
They had no captain. He apparently had a heart attack. He had, the day before, rescued someone who had fallen in the water. Oh. Not a crew member or anything, but a spectator who was there, and had saved them from drowning. And apparently it had some heart issues, and he had a heart attack. And they had to find another captain. And I don't know if it was like the first mate or somebody who was on the ship already. But within a couple of days, they were back on their way to the United States. So they come across again and they get to New York and they're loading equipment like machinery and stuff onto the boat at various ports along the East Coast because they're going to take it to the state of Washington where Captain McDougall is going to build himself another shipyard.
Right.
So in order to do that, they had to go around South America. And I've read both that they went around around Cape Horn, or they went through the Straits of Magellan. I don't know which one is true. You read different stories, and people cite different sources in that. Right. But on the way, while they were going to take this stuff to Washington, they picked up a goat.
Why did they pick up a goat?
I don't know. There was never an explanation for why they needed a
Where
goat.
Did they
in
pick
Philadelphia,
up a goat?
Apparently, they picked up a goat.
Okay, so and it lasted the whole ship.
Yes,
voyage with them and made it to Washington.
And I don't think like living conditions were not. It's not like these guys were traveling on the QE2 or some great transatlantic.
There wasn't a lot of room, is what you're saying.
Right.
Close quarters.
And I don't know what they did with the goat, but yeah.
Okay. Did the goat have a name?
Not that I could find, and he was not well liked by Ned. Let's put it that way, right? Yes. So they took him all the way to Washington and dropped him off in Port Townsend, I believe, is where they dropped the goat off. So he went around South America too.
Was it a rough passage or was it pretty?
No,
easy?
they had a pretty. In fact, going across the Atlantic, it was very calm. It wasn't like a Titanic kind of thing. Right. No icebergs or anything. But I think they got fogged in on the way back. They were 2 days late coming back to the United States because they had fog. But they seem to have made it.
And the trip around.
Yeah, it seemed to have no problems. And people said Ned looked very good after the trip. He was bronze and he had calluses on his hands.
What was his job?
Oh, what was his job? He was the lamplighter, I believe.
The lamplighter?
Yeah.
How many lamps did he have to light?
I don't know. There's not any electricity, so,
Right.
And he would usually hide during the day and try to write because he liked to write. And they said he was working on an opera.
I would like to hear that.
Yeah,
opera.
I know.
Was a goat involved?
Oh gosh, I hope not. But that's what he did, and he got paid $1 a month
for being a lamplighter.
Yes.
$1 a month.
Yeah, $1 a month. And when the
room
trip
and
was
board, I suppose.
over, he owed them 35 cents because he'd spent all his money on tobacco.
Oh, my. Okay. Did he get paid for any of the letters or information that he sent to newspapers?
I'm
at
guessing
the
he
same time?
probably did. He probably got paid from Harper's, I would guess.
But the captain didn't need to know that.
No. It was a deal he made.
Right.
But I think he had a little family money. His dad had passed away not long before this, and they even mentioned in the newspaper that he had left him.
Right.
He had some money. So
when they got to Washington, did he then stop traveling with the whaleback?
Well, the whaleback lost its rudder. I think it was in Oregon or Washington, yeah. So it had to be towed in, but they fixed that. And that actually, I think it was the next year that it just, it was in an accident, and it didn't last very long anyway.
Oh, the Wetmore
Yeah,
itself
the
was
Wetmore,
not
yeah. But he
long-lived.
got off, and he got a job right away with the Seattle newspaper.
Oh, he's back to newspapering.
He must have had a good line to come in and talk to these people, because it seems like everybody just sort of handed him a job. And then he came, and then he didn't stay there for very long. He was going to go up to British Columbia because he had his eye on a job up there, a newspaper job. So there's not much information between that time when he was there and when he got back to Superior, but he made his way back to Superior. There was something about Superior that he liked.
When did he come back to Superior?
He came back to Superior in the fall of 1892 and immediately got a job.
Oh, imagine. There you go.
On the Superior Call. And the funny thing is, how long has that Super One in East End been open? Years now. On the walls, they have pictures from the Douglas County Historical Society of Superior buildings and things around Superior. I'm standing in the checkout line one day in the liquor store, and I look up, and I thought, that says the Superior Call on it. And there were these men standing in front of a building. And I thought, is Ned one of them? Maybe. And then I'm in the grocery store, which I've gone to for as many years it's been open, and I'm standing in the line, and I look up again, and there's a different picture of the Superior Call, and there's men standing in front of there, and I think is one of them Ned, because I have not seen a photo of him.
Really?
There's not even been a sketch in the newspaper.
He was in so many newspapers.
I know.
You would think there would be a photo of him somewhere.
I know. So he comes back and he gets on the Superior Call, and he's here through the end of 92, starting of 93, and he gets sick in April. He had typhoid pneumonia. That's what they said he died of.
Oh, no.
He was only 37. And the outpouring from the people in Superior is pretty amazing. He had apparently made a lot of good friends. And David Barry had at one time taken a photo of him, and at his funeral, he handed out pictures of Ned to everyone who was there.
Oh, wow. So they were really close.
Yeah, and there is a picture of him.
Somewhere.
Somewhere.
If anyone has one,
yes,
let you know.
I already contacted the Douglas County Historical Society to ask them about the photos that were in Super One, and they found one, and there was there were no names on the back of it or anything. So I don't even know if that truly is Ned or not. But David Barry, so he also took at Ned's funeral, he took pictures of the flowers that people had given to him. And Ned had two sisters that were alive. One was a half-sister. His father had married again after Ned's mother died. And neither one of them came to the funeral. They sent a cousin who lived in Chicago. I think he came up.
Which cemetery is he buried at?
He's buried at Nemadji.
Nemadji, okay.
And David Barry was really probably his closest friend, it seems like. And they said even when Ned got sick, and he lingered for about 4 or 5 days, there were always people by his bedside. He lived at the Windsor Hotel. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I have not.
Oh, there's another fascinating story.
You're full of them.
It's what is it, on North 6th between Banks and Tower? Sounds like quite a place. Just before Ned got there, and I don't know if they were still there when Ned showed up in late 1892, but there was a clairvoyant who had taken rooms there, and also a fortune teller, and they would accept customers every day, and they would give you advice not only about the future but on wills or a divorce or whatever else she needed to know.
Clairvoyant and lawyer.
Yeah, and I thought that would be the place that Ned would live. Yeah, I have not seen a picture of that either, which I would love to see because it sounds like a very interesting place.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So,
his friend stayed there with him until he passed away.
So he was well loved.
Yes.
And he did not have a wife or children?
Nobody. And he had a funeral at St. Albans, the Episcopal Church. But yeah, his cousin had come to Superior, but his sisters didn't. About a year later, his sisters sent a tombstone for his grave.
He didn't even have a tombstone.
No. And of course, they had David Berry be in charge of it because he was their contact here, and they knew that he cared about Ned. It's huge. It weighed, I think, 2,000 pounds.
Wow.
They had it delivered here, and so then David Berry had to go out and make sure, it's on the right grave and all of that. So,
wow.
I never knew about this guy. He's amazing. Yeah,
yes,
I know.
Sounds like it. Now, was his story printed in any papers? If people look, would they be able to find the story of his voyages somewhere?
Well, Harper's, I had, that was online. You can see that. The story he wrote for Harper's Weekly. And he's a very good writer. I have to say that, a lot of the writing from that era is just so flowery and like way too many words. But his very, very good writer, I thought.
Wonderful.
Maybe I'm just prejudiced.
Maybe. And it's interesting that he was on a whaleback because whalebacks are, they were only built one place, right?
Right.
And
Superior, Wisconsin. And they were built in Everett, Washington too. I think
he did open that.
Did he only build one or two there? It was not successful.
Okay.
This all happened at the time where there was a financial crisis was going to happen in 1893 that was going to, take its toll on a lot of people. So, but the whaleback, I don't know if I'd go across the ocean on a whaleback.
I don't think so. How many whalebacks did they build here?
I think he built about 40 in total in the Twin Ports. Okay. I'm not sure because I am not a whaleback expert, but I think it's around that number. But they were sort of the transitional shipping mode between, the big lake carriers and then the way they used to try to, haul.
Right. So they were a precursor to today's ore carriers.
Yeah.
Okay. They were bigger, but they weren't that big yet.
Right.
Okay. And some of them were very famous. Like the Columbus?
The Christopher Columbus, that was the one at the World's Fair. Yeah, and that was around for years and years and years. A lot of them were used for many years, but the Meteor was the last one.
Right. And Superior ended up getting the Meteor.
I know.
Do you know how that happened?
I don't know how that happened, but it was originally named the Frank Rockefeller.
Really?
And that was John D. Rockefeller's brother.
Okay.
He was also involved. Frank was not as successful as John D. was, but I think he was somewhat involved in the mining too on the range. So,
but it's if anyone wants to know what kind of conditions Ned was living in with this goat and as a lamplighter, all they have to do is head down to Barker's Island and check out the SS Meteor.
Right. Yeah.
And then they too will wonder, how did you get a goat in there?
Yes. Ned had no love for that goat.
But he did have a love for Superior.
He did. Maybe that's why I like him.
Maybe, I don't know, can we petition the city to change who the Dwight's Point is named after?
That would be great. Or they could change the Meteor to Ned Dwight.
Ned Dwight? I think its
name's already been changed once. Yeah. I think it would be really nice to honor this man. He obviously found something in Superior that he liked, that it made him come back from the big time out in Washington and come back to little old Superior. Maybe it was the friends he made. I don't know. So
thank you, Teddy.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to Archive Dive. New episodes are available monthly at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like us to explore, email me at mlockwood@superiortelegram.com.